My name is Michael Roth. I'm the president and a professor at Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut. Welcome to my exp. The idea that at universities or in the public culture that today there's less freedom to speak than there was when I was a student, to me is absurd. Because when I was a student, people weren't talking about queer folk. They weren't talking about racist oppression everywhere. They weren't talking about the history of women. When I was a graduate student at Princeton, a great history department in the late 70s, the history of women was said, you can't do it really. I mean, Natalie Davis does it, but we can't do it. There are no documents. And so there wasn't censorship and there wasn't political correctness. There was just good old-fashioned sexism and racism that kept some people from speaking at all. And today, white people feel they have to be careful of what they say. To me, it's not the biggest problem. We have now not enough more, but more women professors, more professors of color. We're more sensitive to the idea that really good colleges and universities shouldn't just be finishing schools for the wealthy. They should actually have diverse student bodies. So you actually hear opinions that you might not have heard before because there are people who have different life experiences on their campuses than was the case 50 years ago. Sometimes when people are afraid of disagreement, they say, I am being silenced. I don't think they're being silenced. I think they're just afraid to disagree. And sometimes that's because disagreement can become very nasty, especially in our times of intense polarization. But the freedom to disagree, my goodness, it's so fundamental to education because how else are you going to find out you're wrong than if someone feels free to disagree with you? You see, we often talk about the subject as like, I want to feel free to disagree. That's to me not the issue. It's like, I want people to feel free to disagree with me. Because if they don't feel free to disagree with me, I'll never learn that I'm wrong. The freedom to say whatever you want, I think, has never been that important on a college campus. One is the freedom to say things that are contenders for our attention, our sympathetic imagination, and that might turn out to be true. And so there always have been limitations on that. And so I think this freedom of expression is fundamental, but at times that expression can be simply a tool of intimidation or harassment. And in such cases, people with authority, be they faculty or people like me, administrator, we have to protect the continuation of the conversation by keeping some people from using the conversation to intimidate and harass others. So the freedom to disagree could become a form of intimidation and harassment. And that has to be stopped. And I think people always say to me, well, how could you know? Won't there be fuzzy cases? There will be fuzzy cases. And I think one should err on the side of more freedom. But there are some cases where it's very clear it's just harassment and intimidation. And people with authority on college and university campuses or in the press should keep the action of intimidation and harassment from taking place, even if that action is also an expression. In the age of Facebook and of Twitter and of TikTok and other modes of rapid-fire dissemination, we need to think carefully about how to curate against organized disinformation, so that the organized disinformation doesn't hide under the cloak of the freedom to disagree. And again, there will be hard cases, but there will be some very easy cases in which people are using contemporary modes of dissemination to encourage violence or to put people at greater risk of harm. And we should not allow that form of intimidation or of harassment to persist on platforms that depend on the good graces of the governments in which the platforms operate. I mean, in other words, if a newspaper publishes disinformation in an organized way, they can face consequences. I think we have to find ways to hold the social media platforms responsible for some minimal kind of curation that protects the freedom to disagree and also protects the public from organized disinformation, as we've seen in recent years in the United States.